it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to day 7 of my 2022 holiday card series. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's Ugly and Bright. So I have stamped those images out on some Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. I'm starting with my bear, and I wanted him to look like a polar bear, but I didn't want to use any gray tones. I wanted something that was a little bit warmer, so I decided to go with E50 and E51. So I'm taking that E51 first and just outlining the areas of his body that would be cast in shadow. And then I'll come in with the E50 and blend those out a bit. I'm sticking very close to the outside edges because I don't want him to look like a light brown bear. I want him to look like a white polar bear, but just to have this kind of creamy cast to him that polar bears actually have in real life if you see them in pictures. So I'm just going to let that fade into the white, and then while I have those color tones out, I'm going to use them for the face and belly of my reindeer. And actually, I misspoke earlier. I said I was making a card, but I'm actually making 2 different cards here today. So I'm also going to use that E50 on Santa's skin on the sweater. And then I'm going to move on to some toner grays. I'm using T3 and T5 initially. I'm going to do the bear's muzzle and the reindeer's hooves with that. Though I did decide that I was going to need a 3rd shade on the bear's muzzle. So just those 2 for the reindeer's hooves, and then I added in T1 to finish off the little bear. Then I'm going to take the T0 and use that to add just a touch of shading to Santa's beard and mustache, just to give it a little bit of depth so it's not so flat. And then I just left the rest of it white. I'm also going to use that to add a little bit of color to every other stripe on the collar of the Santa sweater and also the white parts of the Santa hat. And then I use the T1 to add a little extra dimension to the Santa hat white parts. Then I'm going to go back to my E50s, but this time I'm using E53, E55, and E57, and I'm going to do the darker parts of my reindeer. So I'm taking the E57 first and just shading him the same exact way that I did the polar bear. They are both facing completely forward. So a little shadow on the top of the head and up the bridge of the nose, and then under the head where the neck would be, and then on the insides of the arms and where the arms are hanging down over the legs on the outside edges, and then a little bit between the legs. And then I blended that out with the E55, and then I'm coming in with the E53 to just smooth everything out using those little circular scribbling motions to make sure that I get a nice smooth blend and there won't be any harsh lines left behind. Since these are furry critters, I want them to look nice and smooth. And then I'm going to move on to his antlers, and for that I'm going to use E44 and E47. I just wanted something that was a little bit of a duller brown, so it would look a little bit more realistic, like it's made of bone or cartilage or whatever antlers are made of. I know my youngest son would know this information, but yeah, he's the expert, not me. Then I'm going to give them some rosy cheeks using R11 and R20. Just a little oval shape with that R20 and then tracing around it with the R11. And I decided to soften that even further by adding in the R000. And then I'm going to take BG10, BG11, and BG13. I'll do the brim and pom-pom on the little beanie hat, and then the top hem of the sweater, the neckline part. So I just use the BG13 on the outside edges and then blend it out with the BG11. And then while I had that BG11 in my hand, I also added a bit of that to the snowman on the sweater and to the 2 speech bubbles. And then I'm going to blend that out with the BG10, and I'll also come in and finish the brim and the neckline of the sweater. And then I decided to grab my colorless blender to just soften the edge of the BG10 into the white on the speech bubbles and the snowman. For the rest of the snowman sweater, I wanted to do some dark blues. So I'm using B24, B26, and B29. So it's almost like a little nighttime snowman scene on this sweater, since we have the little snowflakes there that are drawn in the background. So I just started with the B29, and then I blended out with the B26, and I'll fill in the rest with the B24. So I'm going to do two different color schemes between these two cards. One is going to be mostly blue and the other one will be mostly red. So I'm going to do the beanie hat to match with those same shades. And then for the little snowman's nose, I used YR07. And then I'm going to do the reds for my Santa, his little hat, and also the Santa hat, the hat on the sweater and the hat that's separate, and the every other stripe on the neckline of that sweater using R24, R29, and R39. And I did squeeze all three of those shades, even in those little boxes on the neckline. You probably could get away with just one or two, but I don't know. I'm a little bit extra sometimes. And then for the rest of the sweater, I wanted something that would contrast with the red hat and make it pop. So I just decided to go traditional Christmas green, but I went with more of like a limey green just to make it a little bit unique. And so I chose YG11, YG13, and YG17. That way the green part isn't too dominant and the Santa is what really stands out on that sweater. And now that the coloring is done, I will trim these images out with their matching dies. So next up, I'm going to take the giant Sending Big Hugs die and trim that out of some Blue Jay cardstock and some Barn Red cardstock. And then additionally, I'm going to trim it out of 2 pieces of white cardstock. So this is an everyday sentiment for any time of year, but I'm going to turn it into a Christmas sentiment by just adding one additional thing, which we will get to in a little bit. But this is a great card to mass produce. It's very quick and simple to put together because it has that really big sentiment that takes up a lot of room on the card. And it just requires very minimal coloring and then some pattern paper. So I am gluing these sentiments down to the white ones, the colored ones to the white ones, and shifting it slightly to the right so I get a bit of a drop shadow. And the reason for that is just so it will stand out on the pattern paper that I'm going to be using. Without the drop shadow, the sentiment might blend into the pattern paper a little bit more than what I'm going for. So it just depends on the look that you like, but I chose to do it this way. I think it would also be nice to have a black shadow, but the pattern paper that I'm using has white in that pattern, so that's why I decided to use the white drop shadow. So I'm just making sure those are lined up and then pressing them down into place. And then I also have the dots of the eyes. There's a larger dot for the eye in big and then a smaller dot for the eye in sending. So I'm going to keep using my Barely Art Precision craft glue for this because it has that super fine nozzle, but then I'm going to use my Studio Katia embellishment wand to help me get those lined up just right because they are kind of a organic shape, so I just need to make sure that the dots are both going the same direction so that they aren't kind of like laying oblong or something, you know. It's kind of like more of an oval shape for the ones on the big eye. So just making sure that I have those lined up. They're a little bit fiddly, and I did have an extra dot the first time that I die cut the word the Sending Big Hugs out of the Blue Jay cardstock. It didn't die cut all the way, and that's because my plate is a bit too warped, I need to change to a new one. So I ended up with an extra dot there. That's why there was an extra one. So now I'm going to go to my pattern paper. I'm using the Nitpicky Winter pattern paper from Lawn Fawn. And I'm going to take out the dark blue sweater print and then the red sweater print. And I'm going to trim both of those down using the outside in stitched rectangle stackables. And then I am going to stamp the word cozy using one of the sentiments from Ugly and Bright, and I am just taping off the words around it with a little bit of post-it tape so that I only stamp that one word down. And I'm going to do that in Blue Jay ink and also in Lobster ink. So I have one for the blue card and one for the red card. You can kind of see that off to the right that I just used a little piece of post-it tape on either side of the word cozy, inked up the word that I want, and then removed those masks and pressed that down into place so that I had my little extra part that's going to make it a Christmas card instead of an everyday card. So while I have my Misty out, I'm also going to do an insert for the inside of my card. Since I'm using dark colored card bases, sometimes it's nice to stamp an insert instead of stamping directly on the card. Just makes your greeting that you're going to write a little bit more legible. Or you could use a white gel pen to write it on the darker colored cardstock. So I'm choosing 3 more sweaters and then stamping out have a cozy holiday season. And I'm doing one in the Blue Jay ink for the blue card and then one in the Lobster ink for the red card. So the insides of the cards are going to be the same, just using alternating ink colors. So now you can see that I have all of my elements ready to go and I'm ready to start assembling. I'm going to begin with the inserts, just gluing those down. So I get that nice little bit of a border on the outside edges, which I think really makes the insert pop. And then to the outside of the card, I'm going to glue that pattern paper. So the blue one on the Blue Jay cardstock, and then I'll do the red ones on the Barn Red cardstock. And I just cut and scored and folded those to be standard A2 size cards. So they are 4 1/4 wide by 5 1/2 tall with a top fold. I always do top folds. It's just my personal preference. So I'm going to add that pattern paper to the front as well. So you can kind of see once you have all of the elements, this would be really quick and easy to do assembly style. And there's even another animal. There's a fox in this stamp set as well. So it would be fun to do like a green version as well. But I just decided to do the 2 for today. But anyway, I'm going to next attach my sentiment to each of the cards. So I'm just going to center that on the scene. Make sure I have about the same edges on all 4 sides. And then once I have that where I want it, I'm going to hold it down into place just to make sure that it is really well adhered. And then I'll do the same process for the red version. So I'm not someone who really enjoys mass producing, and it would certainly make this holiday card series very short if I was, because I would only need to make like 1 card for you guys. So, but I know a lot of you guys like the mass producing because it's just a really quick and easy way to get your cards done. So this is definitely one that would work for you guys who do enjoy that kind of card. Or even if you're just someone like me who likes to make different kind of cards, but it's just nice to be able to get 2 or 3 cards out of one crafting session. This is a great one for that. So I'm just adding the little dots above the eyes next. The big one is going to be mostly covered up in the final card, but I still just wanted it to be there in case a little bit of it showed. So once I have those done, I can bring in my images, and I'm going to start with my critters. So those are going to go right on top of the letter I, the big letter I, but I'm going to place the word cozy right beneath their feet. So the whole sentiment will say sending big cozy hugs. And it also just gives them like a little bit of a platform to stand on. So I just trimmed down that word cozy into like a small little strip. And then I'm kind of like tucking the very edge of their feet right behind it and just gluing them into place. And I'm going to do the same thing for both versions. Just put the blue one on the blue version, and then I'll grab my polar bear, and while that glue is still wet, I'm going to slip him right behind so that he is standing on that little block. So once I have them on the card, I just need to dress them in their cute little holiday gear. So the reindeer is going to get the Santa sweater. So I'm just going to add that so that it looks like it's on there correctly with his arms kind of poking out. And then the polar bear is going to get the snowman sweater, which I thought was kind of cute since he lives in the snowy, the Arctic. So I'm going to add the Santa hat to the reindeer. So the reindeer one is actually more of a Christmas card, where the polar bear could actually just be a winter card. You wouldn't necessarily have to send it out for the holidays. It could be any time during the winter season. So then I'm going to take the two little extra sentiments. I'm going to give the Merry Christmas one to the reindeer, and I'm making sure to add it to a part of the sentiment where you can still make out what the sentiment says. So I didn't want to put it too high up on the E in sending, because that kind of makes it look like an F. So I just kind of lowered it down a bit so you could see part of the bottom section of the E, so you knew that was an E behind. So the last thing I'm going to do is add a bit of glitter. I'm using my favorite Stardust Stickles. I added it to the whites of the Santa hat, both on the sweater and on the hat. And then I'm putting it on the snowman and the collar and the turquoise parts of the beanie. And then I added it to the collar of the other sweater as well. And then I wanted to add just a bit more glitter to finish this off. So I took some clear sequins and I'm just going to glue those down into place as well. Just a couple. I did 3 toward the bottom and then 2 at the top because I prefer to use odd numbers. And then I'm going to let that dry for maybe a minute or so, and then I want to just fill in the holes with a little extra Stardust Stickles. It just gives another opportunity for a little flash of sparkle on the card. So I'm going to just do both of those, and that is pretty much going to finish up this card. My Stickles bottle got clogged again, so I just had to use the pin from my Barely Art Precision Craft Glue to clear that out. And then I could continue. So I'm going to lift these up one at a time so you can see all of the detail and also give you another peek at the inside. You can let me know down in the comments which version is your favorite. I don't know. I really like them both, but if you twisted my arm, I'd probably say the polar bear version just because I love polar bears so much. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and leave me a comment down below. I love chatting with you guys. Make sure you're subscribed and that you've rung that notification bell because we have lots more videos in this holiday card series to come. All of the products that I used today will be listed and linked for you in the description bar below. And if you'd like to keep watching, here is day 7 of the previous 2 years of holiday card series. Thank you so much for spending your time with me. I will see you soon in another video. Bye-bye.